The sound of gunfire echoed through the dusty streets of Red Bluff, California, but inside the small wooden chapel at the edge of town, Olivia Thompson heard only the desperate rhythm of her own prayers. It was the summer of 1876, and the gold rush had long since faded, leaving behind a scattered collection of souls trying to carve out honest lives in a land that seemed determined to break them. Olivia knelt on the rough wooden floor, her calico dress dusty from the road, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. She had been kneeling there for what felt like hours, though the afternoon sun streaming through the cracked window told her it had been less than one. Her lips moved in silent petition, asking God for a miracle she had no right to expect. The chapel door creaked open behind her, and she tensed but did not turn. Perhaps it was Reverend Morris returning from his rounds, or perhaps it was one of the local women coming to light a candle for some private intention. Olivia kept her eyes squeezed shut and continued her prayer, though the words had begun to blur together in her exhausted mind. Heavy footsteps approached down the center aisle, boots against wood, slow and deliberate. Still, she did not look. She could not afford to be distracted from this final plea, this last desperate attempt to find some path forward when all paths seemed to have closed before her. The footsteps stopped directly behind her, and a man's voice spoke, low and rough with the dust of long travel. "Your prayers are answered. I'm here to stay." Olivia's eyes flew open, and she turned so quickly that she nearly lost her balance. Standing above her was a man who looked like he had ridden straight out of one of the adventure novels her mother used to read aloud on quiet evenings. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his worn denim shirt. His eyes were a startling blue-green, the color of the river on a clear day, and they held an expression that was both weary and kind. A gun belt hung low on his hips, but his hands were relaxed at his sides, making no move toward the weapon. "I beg your pardon." Olivia managed, her voice hoarse from praying and from the tears she had been holding back. The man tilted his head slightly, as if reconsidering his dramatic entrance. A faint color rose in his weathered cheeks. "I apologize, miss. That came out stranger than I intended. I'm Jackson Lawson, and I'm looking for work in town. The door was open, and I heard someone in here. I thought perhaps you were in some kind of trouble." Olivia sat back on her heels, her heart still racing from the surprise. Now that the initial shock had passed, she could see that the man looked as worn out as she felt. Dust covered him from head to toe, and his horse, visible through the open door, stood with its head hanging low in the shade of the chapel's small overhang. "I am in trouble," she heard herself say, though she had not meant to confide in a stranger. Perhaps it was the exhaustion, or perhaps it was the fact that she had just been pouring her heart out to God, and this man had appeared as if in answer. "Though I don't know what you could do about it." Jackson Lawson moved to the pew nearest to where she knelt and sat down slowly, keeping a respectful distance. "Sometimes talking about trouble makes it seem a little smaller," he said, "and I've got time to listen if you've got time to talk." Olivia studied him for a long moment. Everything about him spoke of loneliness, the kind that came from riding alone for too long, from sleeping under stars without anyone to share the silence. She recognized it because she carried that same loneliness inside herself, though hers had a different source. "My father died 6 weeks ago," she began, and once the words started flowing, she found she could not stop them. "He owned a small ranch about 5 miles north of town. Nothing fancy, just 100 acres and some cattle, but it was ours. He built it from nothing after my mother passed when I was 12. It was supposed to be my inheritance, my security." She paused, swallowing hard against the grief that still felt fresh and sharp. Jackson waited patiently, his eyes never leaving her face. But there was debt, she continued. Debt I didn't know about. My father had borrowed money from a man named Marcus Yates, who owns most of the land around here. The payments were supposed to be manageable, but my father got sick last winter and couldn't work. The debt grew. And now Yates is demanding full payment within 30 days or he'll take the ranch. How much? Jackson asked quietly. $800. The sum felt impossible, a mountain too high to climb. I've been trying to find work, but there's nothing in town for a woman that pays enough. I could clean houses for 5 years and not save that much. I've sold everything we had of value, every piece of jewelry my mother owned, every tool and saddle we could spare. I managed to raise $200, but that still leaves $600, and I have less than 3 weeks left. Jackson was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the simple wooden cross that hung above the altar. What about family? Friends who might help? Olivia shook her head. We kept to ourselves mostly. My father was a proud man, never wanted to ask for help from anyone, and we have no family left. It was just the two of us for so long that I never learned how to need anyone else. Her voice broke slightly on the last words. Until now, when I need someone desperately and there's no one to turn to. There's me, Jackson said, and the simplicity of the statement made Olivia look up sharply. You're a stranger who just walked through that door. Why would you help me? Jackson leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I've been riding for 3 months, ever since I left my brother's ranch in Nevada. He died, you see. Fever took him fast, and his wife followed 2 weeks later. They left behind 3 children, and my brother's wife's family came to take them east. They didn't want me around, said I was too much of a drifter, too unsettled to be any kind of influence on growing kids. He paused, and Olivia could see the pain in his eyes, the kind that came from being rejected by people you thought would stand by you. Maybe they were right, he continued, but it made me realize I didn't have anywhere to belong anymore. I've been moving from town to town, picking up work here and there, sleeping under stars and in boarding houses, and always feeling like I was waiting for something. When I heard you praying in here, heard the desperation in your voice even though I couldn't make out the words, I thought maybe this was what I'd been waiting for. A chance to put down roots somewhere, to help someone who needs it, to stop being alone. Olivia felt something shift in her chest, a tiny spark of hope that she was almost afraid to acknowledge. You don't know me, she repeated, but her voice was softer now. No, Jackson agreed, but I know what it's like to lose everything, and I know what it's like to pray for a miracle. Maybe we can be each other's answered prayer. The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, the dusty little chapel felt like the most sacred place in the world. Olivia rose slowly from her knees, her legs stiff from kneeling for so long. Jackson stood as well, and they faced each other across 3 feet of space that felt both vast and insignificant. What exactly are you proposing? Olivia asked carefully. I have some money saved, Jackson said. Not $600, but maybe $200. That would give you $400 total. And I'm good with cattle, good with horses, good with fixing things and building things. If you let me work your ranch, help you make it profitable again, we could pay off Yates together. I'd have a place to stay, work that matters, and you'd keep your home. It was practical, sensible even. But Olivia had learned to be cautious, especially with men she did not know. And what would you want in return? Beyond room and board, Jackson met her eyes steadily. A chance to prove I'm not just a drifter, a chance to build something lasting. And maybe, if we work well together, we could become friends. I've been lonely for a long time, miss. I imagine you have too. Seems like we might ease that for each other if nothing else. Olivia felt tears prick at her eyes again, but these were different from the ones she had been fighting earlier. These came from relief, from gratitude, from the sudden overwhelming sense that maybe, just maybe, she was not as alone as she had thought. "I don't even know you," she said one more time, but it was a weak protest now. "Then let's get to know each other," Jackson replied. "We've got time and we've got work to do. The rest will follow if it's meant to." Olivia took a deep breath and made a decision that felt both reckless and right. "All right, Mr. Lawson. You have yourself a deal, but I should warn you the ranch is in rough shape and the work will be hard." "I've never been afraid of hard work," Jackson said, and when he smiled, it transformed his entire face. He looked younger, more hopeful, and Olivia felt that spark of hope in her own chest grow a little brighter. They shook hands there in the chapel, a formal agreement between strangers who had somehow become something more in the space of a single conversation. Jackson's hand was calloused and strong, and Olivia felt the steadiness in his grip, the promise of reliability. "We should go to the bank," Olivia said, suddenly practical. "If you're serious about this, we need to combine our money and make a payment to Yates right away." "Show him we're working on it." Jackson nodded. "Lead the way, Miss Thompson." "Olivia," she corrected. "If we're going to be working together, you should call me Olivia." "Only if you call me Jackson," he replied. They walked out of the chapel together into the bright California sunshine, and Olivia felt as if she were stepping into a new chapter of her life. The town of Red Bluff stretched before them, a collection of wooden buildings and dusty streets that had been her whole world for most of her life. But today, with Jackson Lawson walking beside her, it looked different somehow. Fuller of possibility. The bank was a solid brick building in the center of town, one of the few structures that looked like it could withstand anything nature or man might throw at it. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of paper and ink. The bank manager, a portly man named Henry Griffin, looked up from his desk with a practiced smile that faded slightly when he saw Olivia. "Miss Thompson," he said, his tone sympathetic but wary. "I hope you're not here to ask for an extension on your father's debt. I've explained that Mr. Yates has been more than patient already." "I'm here to make a payment," Olivia said firmly, and she had the satisfaction of seeing Griffin's eyebrows rise in surprise. Jackson stepped forward and placed a small leather pouch on the desk. "I'd like to add this to Miss Thompson's account," he said. $200 to be applied directly to her debt with Marcus Yates." Griffin's eyes moved from the pouch to Jackson's face, and Olivia could see him making calculations, trying to figure out who this stranger was and what his relationship to her might be. "This is Jackson Lawson," Olivia said before the banker could ask. "He's my new business partner. He'll be helping me manage the ranch and ensure all debts are paid in full." It was not quite the truth, or perhaps it was more than the truth, but it sounded official and proper. Griffin seemed to accept it, though his expression remained skeptical. He counted out the money carefully, made a notation in his ledger, and wrote out a receipt. "That brings your total debt down to $600, he said, handing the receipt to Olivia. "Due in 18 days. "We're aware of the timeline," Jackson said, his voice pleasant but firm. "We'll make another payment within the week." They left the bank together, and Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was not much, but it was progress. It was proof that she was not giving up without a fight. "You didn't have to do that," she said as they walked toward the livery stable where her wagon waited. "Give me all your savings. You don't know if this will work out." Jackson shrugged. "Money only matters if you have something worth spending it on. This feels worth it." At the livery stable, they loaded Jackson's saddle and gear into the back of Olivia's wagon. His horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Copper, was tied to the back. The stable hand, a young man named Tommy, watched with undisguised curiosity but had the good sense not to ask questions. The ride out to the ranch took nearly an hour, following a rutted dirt road that wound through rolling hills dotted with oak trees. Olivia drove the wagon while Jackson rode alongside on Copper, and they talked in fits and starts, sharing pieces of their histories like offerings. Olivia learned that Jackson was 26 years old, born and raised in Colorado before his family moved to Nevada when he was 15. His father had been a rancher, and Jackson had learned the trade from childhood. He had two older sisters who were both married and living back east, and he rarely heard from them. His brother, the one who had died, had been his closest friend. "We were going to build something together," Jackson said, his voice tinged with old grief. "Buy a big piece of land and raise the best horses in the territory." But life had other plans. In turn, Olivia told him about her childhood, about her mother's gentle nature and her father's determination. She spoke of the years after her mother's death, when it had been just her and her father against the world. She had learned to ride and rope, to brand cattle and mend fences, to do all the things a son might have done if her father had been blessed with one. "He never made me feel like I was less because I was a girl," Olivia said. "He taught me everything he knew, but he also worried about what would happen to me after he was gone. I think that's why he worked himself so hard, why he took on debt trying to expand. He wanted to leave me something substantial, something that could support me for the rest of my life." "Sounds like he loved you a great deal," Jackson said quietly. "He did," Olivia agreed, her throat tight. "And I loved him. That's why I can't let Yates take the ranch. It would feel like losing my father all over again." The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise, and Olivia saw it through Jackson's eyes, trying to gauge his reaction. The house was small and weathered, a simple two-room structure with a covered porch. The barn was in better shape, sturdy and well-built, with a corral attached. Beyond that stretched pastures where perhaps 30 head of cattle grazed, looking thin and scattered. Jackson said nothing as they approached, but Olivia could see him taking it all in, assessing. When they pulled up in front of the house, he dismounted and helped her down from the wagon, his hand steady at her waist. "It's not much," Olivia said, feeling suddenly defensive. "But it's honest land and the cattle are good stock. We've just had a hard few months." "It's a good foundation," Jackson said, and she could hear the sincerity in his voice. "The bones are solid. With some work, this could be a fine operation." They spent the rest of the afternoon with Jackson getting the lay of the land. Olivia showed him the water sources, the boundary markers, the best grazing areas. They walked through the barn, which held 2 milk cows, a handful of chickens, and equipment in various states of repair. Jackson examined everything with a careful eye, making mental notes. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, they returned to the house. Olivia felt suddenly awkward, aware that she was about to invite this man, this stranger, into her home. "There's a spare room," she said, trying to sound matter-of-fact. "It's small, but it has a bed and a window. You're welcome to it." Jackson nodded. "I appreciate that. I'll earn my keep, I promise." They prepared dinner together, a simple meal of beans and cornbread with salt pork. Olivia had not shared a meal with anyone since her father's death, and she found herself acutely aware of Jackson's presence across the small table. He ate with good manners but obvious hunger, and she realized he had probably been living on trail rations for months. "This is the best meal I've had in a long time," he said, and she could tell he meant it. After dinner, they sat on the porch as twilight deepened into night. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of grass and distant wildflowers. Crickets sang in the darkness, and somewhere far off, a coyote howled. "Tell me about Marcus Yates," Jackson said. "What kind of man is he?" Olivia felt her jaw tighten. "The kind who sees people as assets or obstacles. He came to California during the gold rush and made his fortune not by mining but by loaning money to miners at outrageous interest rates. When the gold ran out, he started buying up land. He owns half the county now, and he's always looking to own more. Does he have men who work for him?" "Enforcers. Several. They call themselves ranch hands, but everyone knows they're more than that. Yates doesn't like to be told no." Jackson was quiet for a moment. "Has he threatened you directly?" "Not in so many words. But he came out here 2 weeks after my father died, looked around like he already owned the place, and told me it would be easier for everyone if I just signed it over to him. Said a woman alone couldn't run a ranch anyway, and I'd be doing myself a favor by letting it go." "I imagine you didn't take kindly to that," Jackson said, and Olivia could hear the hint of amusement in his voice. "I told him I'd see him in hell first," Olivia replied. "He didn't like that much, said I'd come around when I realized I had no other options." "Well, now you have options," Jackson said firmly. "We'll make this work, Olivia. I give you my word." She wanted to believe him. More than that, she found that she did believe him. There was something solid about Jackson Lawson, something that made her feel less alone than she had in months. They talked a while longer about nothing and everything, until Olivia found herself yawning despite her best efforts to stay awake. Jackson noticed and stood immediately. "You should get some rest," he said. "We have a lot of work ahead of us starting tomorrow." Olivia showed him to the spare room, which had been her father's before he died. She had cleaned it out weeks ago, unable to bear seeing his things every day, but the room still carried memories. If Jackson sensed any of that, he did not mention it. He simply thanked her, bid her good night, and closed the door in her own room. Olivia changed into her nightgown and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house felt different with someone else in it, less empty and haunted. She could hear the faint sounds of Jackson moving around in the next room, settling in. It was strangely comforting. She thought about the day, about the way it had started with her on her knees in the chapel, desperate and alone, and the way it was ending with a stranger who had become something like a partner sleeping in the next room. It felt like a dream, like something that could not possibly be real. But it was real, and tomorrow they would begin the hard work of saving her ranch. With that thought, Olivia finally closed her eyes and drifted into the first peaceful sleep she had had in weeks. The next morning, she woke to the sound of someone chopping wood. For a confused moment, she thought it was her father, that the last 6 weeks had been a nightmare and everything was back to normal. But then reality settled in, and she remembered. She dressed quickly in her work clothes, sturdy trousers and a cotton shirt, and went outside. Jackson had already chopped enough wood to last a week and was now hauling water from the well. He looked up when he heard the door and gave her a nod of greeting. "Morning," he said. "Figured I'd get a head start on the chores." "You didn't have to do all that," Olivia said, though she was grateful. Those were chores she had been dreading. "Like I said, I'm going to earn my keep." He set down the water buckets and stretched his back. "I was thinking we should ride out and get a proper count of the cattle today. See what condition they are in, check for any injuries or illness. Then we can make a plan for moving them to better grazing." It was exactly what needed to be done, and Olivia felt a rush of relief that she did not have to make all the decisions alone anymore. "That sounds good. Let me fix us some breakfast first." They ate quickly, then saddled the horses. Olivia rode her mare, a sweet-tempered paint named Daisy, while Jackson rode Copper. Together they set out across the pastures, and for the next several hours they worked in tandem, rounding up cattle, checking them over and making notes. Jackson had a way with animals that impressed Olivia. He moved calmly and confidently, never rushing, never spooking the herd. He pointed out things she had missed, signs of parasites or poor nutrition, and suggested remedies. By midday, they had a full accounting. 32 head total, most in fair condition but several in need of extra care. "We need to move them to the north pasture," Jackson said as they sat in the shade of an oak tree, eating the lunch Olivia had packed. "The grass is better there, and there's a stream for water. They'll fatten up faster, and fat cattle bring better prices." "I know," Olivia said. "My father always meant to move them, but he got sick before he could." "We'll do it this week," Jackson said. "And we should think about selling off a few of the older steers. That'll bring in some quick money toward the debt." Olivia nodded. It made sense, though it hurt to think of selling any of the herd her father had worked so hard to build. But survival required tough choices. They spent the afternoon mending fences, hard physical labor that left them both exhausted and dusty. But there was satisfaction in it too, in seeing the tangible results of their work. As they walked back to the house in the fading light, Olivia realized she felt more hopeful than she had in months. With Jackson's help, saving the ranch actually seemed possible. Over the next week, they fell into a rhythm. They rose early and worked until dark, moving cattle, repairing equipment, and improving the property. Jackson proved to be as skilled as he had claimed, and more than that, he was good company. He had a dry sense of humor that caught Olivia off guard and made her laugh, something she had not done nearly enough of lately. He was also respectful, never pushing boundaries, always maintaining a proper distance even as they grew more comfortable with each other. On the 8th day, they drove a wagon full of cattle into town to sell. The local buyer, a man named Stuart Phillips, inspected the animals carefully and made an offer. It was less than Olivia had hoped for, but more than she had feared. Jackson negotiated skillfully, managing to get an extra $50 by pointing out the quality of the stock. In the end, they walked away with $350. At the bank, they made another payment, bringing the debt down to $250. It was progress, real and measurable, and Olivia felt a surge of pride as they left the building. "One more good sale and we'll have it paid off," Jackson said. "And we still have 9 days." But as they walked back to the wagon, Olivia saw a man watching them from across the street. He was tall and well-dressed, with silver hair and a cold expression. Marcus Yates. When he saw her looking, he tipped his hat in a mocking gesture, then turned and walked away. "That's him," Olivia said quietly. "That's Yates." Jackson's expression hardened. "He doesn't look worried." "No," Olivia agreed, feeling a chill despite the warm day. "He doesn't." The encounter cast a shadow over their success, but Jackson refused to let it dampen their spirits. On the ride home, he talked about plans for the ranch, ideas for expansion and improvement. He spoke as if he would be there for years, not just until the debt was paid, and Olivia realized she wanted him to stay. She had grown used to his presence, to the way he made everything seem more manageable, to the sound of his voice and the steadiness of his companionship. That evening, as they sat on the porch after dinner, Olivia found herself studying Jackson in the lamplight. He had shaved that morning, and she could see the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was a handsome man, she realized, though she had been too preoccupied with survival to notice before. "What are you thinking about?" Jackson asked, catching her staring. Olivia felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Just wondering what you'll do after the debt is paid." "Will you stay or will you move on?" Jackson was quiet for a long moment. "That depends," he said finally. "On what?" "On whether you want me to stay." The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Olivia's heart began to beat faster, and she knew her answer before she had fully formed the thought. "I want you to stay," she said softly. "I know we haven't known each other long, but I can't imagine running this place without you now. And more than that, I don't want to be alone anymore." Jackson leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I don't want to be alone either. These past days, working alongside you, talking with you, just being here, it's been the most content I've felt in years. You're easy to be with, Olivia. Easy to talk to, easy to work with. And if I'm being honest, I'm already starting to feel something more than just friendship for you." Olivia's breath caught. "I feel it too," she admitted. "It scares me a little how fast it's happening, but it also feels right, like maybe we were meant to find each other." "Your prayers are answered," Jackson said, echoing his words from that first day in the chapel. "And so are mine. I prayed for a place to belong, for someone to belong with. I think I found both when I found you." He reached out and took her hand, and Olivia led him, marveling at how natural it felt. They sat like that for a long time, holding hands in the darkness, while the stars came out overhead and the night sound sang around them. The next morning brought trouble. Olivia woke to the sound of shouting and ran outside to find Jackson facing down 3 men on horseback. She recognized them immediately as Yates's men, thugs dressed up as cowboys. The leader was a man named Carl Winters, known for his quick temper and quicker fists. "What's going on here?" Olivia demanded, stepping up beside Jackson. Winters looked at her with a sneer. "Mr. Yates sent us to deliver a message. He's heard you've been making payments, but he wants to make sure you understand the terms. The full amount is due in 8 days, not a dollar short. And if you can't pay, he'll be taking possession immediately." "We understand the terms perfectly," Jackson said, his voice hard. "Now get off this property." Winters's eyes narrowed. "You're that stranger who wandered into town. Word is you and Miss Thompson here have gotten real cozy real fast. Yates thought you should know that he doesn't take kindly to outsiders interfering in his business." "This is my business," Olivia said firmly. "My ranch, my debt, my decision about who I work with. You can tell Yates that we'll pay what we owe when it's due and not a moment before." Winters spat in the dirt, clearly unhappy with the response. "You're making a mistake, both of you. Yates always gets what he wants one way or another." "Is that a threat?" Jackson asked quietly, and there was something dangerous in his tone that made even Winters pause. "Just a fact," Winters said, but he pulled his horse around and gestured for his companions to follow. "8 days, Miss Thompson. Don't forget." They rode off in a cloud of dust, and Olivia felt herself shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. Jackson put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "They're trying to intimidate you," he said. "Don't let them." "I'm not intimidated," Olivia said, though her voice trembled slightly. "I'm furious. Yates is trying to scare me into giving up, but I can't." "We won't," Jackson corrected gently. "We're in this together, remember." Over the next few days, they pushed themselves even harder. They sold more cattle, bringing in another $200. With only $50 left to pay, victory seemed within reach. But Olivia could not shake the feeling that something was wrong, that Yates would not give up so easily. Her fears were confirmed 3 days before the payment was due. She and Jackson returned from town to find the barn on fire. Flames licked at the wooden structure and smoke billowed into the sky. They ran forward, Jackson shouting orders. Together, they managed to get the animals out, the cows and horses terrified but unharmed. Neighbors who had seen the smoke came to help, and they formed a bucket brigade from the well. It took hours, but they finally got the fire under control. The barn was not a total loss, but a good portion of it was destroyed. Olivia stood looking at the damage, tears streaming down her face. All their hard work, all their progress, and now this. This was Yates, she said, her voice raw. "He did this to punish us for not giving up." Jackson's jaw was tight, his eyes blazing with anger. "We can't prove it, but I believe you're right. The question is, what do we do about it?" "We finish what we started," Olivia said, wiping her tears away. "We make that final payment and we keep this ranch. And then we rebuild, stronger than before." The neighbors stayed to help clean up, and several of them pulled Olivia aside to offer words of support. She learned that Yates had done similar things to others who had refused to sell to him, burning property, killing livestock, making life unbearable until people gave up. But no one had ever been able to prove his involvement. "Don't let him win," said Mrs. Miller, an older woman who ran a small farm nearby. "Some of us didn't have the strength to fight back, but you do. You and that young man of yours." "He's not my young man," Olivia protested weakly, though the words felt like a lie even as she said them. Mrs. Miller just smiled knowingly. "Maybe not yet, but anyone with eyes can see the way you two look at each other. Don't let fear keep you from happiness, dear. Life's too short and too hard out here to pass up on love when you find it." The words stayed with Olivia as she and Jackson worked through the night to secure what was left of the barn and make sure the animals were safe. They were exhausted and filthy by the time they finally stumbled back to the house, but there was no time to rest. Tomorrow they would need to come up with the final $50, and Olivia had no idea where it would come from, but Jackson surprised her. As they sat at the kitchen table, too tired to even think about sleeping, he pulled out a leather pouch from his saddlebag. "I have one more thing I can sell," he said, opening the pouch to reveal a pocket watch. It was silver and beautifully engraved, clearly valuable. "This was my grandfather's. He gave it to my father, and my father gave it to me. It's the last thing of value I own." Olivia stared at the watch, understanding what it meant to him. "Jackson, no, you can't sell that. It's your family heirloom." "Family is more than objects," Jackson said quietly. "Family is the people you choose to stand with, the people you build a life with. I'm choosing you, Olivia. I'm choosing this ranch, this future we're building together. The watch is just a thing. It can be replaced. But this, what we have, that's worth keeping." Olivia felt tears well up again, but these were different. These came from being deeply, profoundly moved by someone's sacrifice. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll let me do this," Jackson said. "Say you trust me and you want me to stay even after the debt is paid. Say there's a chance for us to be more than just business partners." Olivia reached across the table and took his hand, the gesture that had become familiar between them. "I trust you," she said, "and I want you to stay. And yes, there's more than a chance. I'm falling in love with you, Jackson Lawson. I know it's fast and probably foolish, but it's the truth." Jackson's face broke into a smile that transformed him completely. He stood and pulled her to her feet, drawing her close. "It's not foolish. I'm falling in love with you too. I think I started falling that first day in the chapel when I saw how strong you were, how determined. And every day since then, I've fallen a little more." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a promise and a beginning. Olivia melted into him, feeling safe and cherished in a way she had not felt since her mother died. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard, and the exhaustion of the day had been replaced by something electric and alive. "We should probably get some sleep," Jackson said, though he made no move to let her go. "Probably," Olivia agreed, but she did not step away either. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the lamplight before finally, reluctantly, parting to their separate rooms. But Olivia lay awake for hours, her lips still tingling from that kiss, her heart full of a happiness she had not thought possible just weeks before. The next morning they rode into town together. At the jeweler's shop, Jackson sold the pocket watch. The jeweler recognized its value and paid a fair price, $75. With the money they had saved, they now had more than enough to make the final payment. At the bank, they stood together before Henry Griffin's desk and counted out the full amount. $250, every cent they owed. Griffin seemed almost disappointed as he marked the debt as paid in full and handed them a receipt. "You'll need to have Mr. Yates sign off on this," he said. "But legally, the debt is satisfied. The ranch is yours free and clear, Miss Thompson." Olivia felt like she could breathe fully for the first time in months. "Thank you, Mr. Griffin," but the victory felt incomplete. They still needed to face Yates and ensure he could not find some loophole or technicality to steal the ranch anyway. Jackson suggested they go to Yates's office immediately, and Olivia agreed. Yates's office was above the saloon, a large room furnished with dark wood and leather. The man himself sat behind an enormous desk, and he looked up with mild surprise when they walked in. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice smooth and cold, "to what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" Olivia placed the receipt on his desk. "I've paid my father's debt in full. I need you to sign this and acknowledge that you have no further claim on my property." Yates picked up the receipt and studied it, his expression unreadable. "So you have. I must admit I'm surprised. I didn't think you had it in you." "You mean you didn't think I'd find a way because you tried to stop me," Olivia said, her voice hard. "The barn fire was your doing, wasn't it?" Yates's eyes flickered with something that might have been amusement. "That's a serious accusation, Miss Thompson. Do you have proof?" "No," Jackson said, speaking for the first time. "But we both know the truth. You tried to break her to force her to sell, but she's stronger than you thought and you failed." Yates leaned back in his chair, studying Jackson with cold calculation. "You're the drifter who rode into town and decided to play hero. Tell me, Mr. Lawson, what do you get out of all this? What's your angle?" "I get a home," Jackson said simply. "And I get to stand with someone worth standing with. That's more than enough." For a long moment, Yates said nothing. Then he picked up a pen, signed the receipt with a flourish, and pushed it back across the desk. "Congratulations, Miss Thompson. The ranch is yours, but let me give you some advice. This county is growing and change is coming. Small operations like yours won't survive. Eventually, you'll come back to me, hat in hand, begging to sell. And when you do, I won't be as generous with my offer." "I won't be back," Olivia said, taking the signed receipt, "and my ranch will survive just fine." They left the office and walked out into the bright sunshine. Olivia felt giddy with relief and triumph. They had done it. Against all odds, they had saved the ranch. "We should celebrate," Jackson said, grinning at her. "How?" Olivia asked. "Dinner at the hotel restaurant. A real meal with tablecloths and everything." "Let me take you on a proper date. Olivia Thompson." Olivia felt her cheeks warm with pleasure. "I'd like that very much." That evening they returned to town dressed in their best clothes. Olivia wore a dress she had not put on since her father's funeral, a deep blue cotton that brought out her eyes. Jackson had somehow procured a clean white shirt and looked impossibly handsome. The hotel restaurant was small but respectable, and they sat at a corner table, eating roast chicken and potatoes while talking and laughing like they had known each other for years instead of weeks. "I keep thinking this is a dream," Olivia said at one point. "That I'll wake up and you'll be gone and the debt will still be hanging over me." "It's not a dream," Jackson assured her. "I'm real and I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me now." "Good," Olivia said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I don't ever want you to leave." After dinner, they walked through town in the cool evening air, and Jackson pulled her into the shadows beside the general store and kissed her again, longer and deeper than before. Olivia felt like she was floating, like every nerve in her body had come alive. "Marry me," Jackson said when they finally broke apart. "I know it's fast, but I don't care. I love you, Olivia. I want to build a life with you, grow old with you, fill that ranch with children and laughter. Marry me and make me the happiest man alive." Olivia felt tears spill down her cheeks, but she was smiling so hard her face hurt. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you. I love you too, Jackson, so much it scares me sometimes." They kissed again, sealing the promise, and Olivia felt like her heart might burst from happiness. Just weeks ago, she had been alone and desperate, kneeling in a chapel and praying for a miracle. And now here she was, engaged to a man she loved, with her ranch saved and her future bright. The wedding was held 2 weeks later in the same chapel where they had met. Reverend Morris officiated, and half the town showed up to witness the union. Mrs. Miller cried happy tears, and even Henry Griffin from the bank attended, looking bemused by the whole affair. Olivia wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved all these years, and Jackson wore a new suit purchased with money from their first successful cattle sale after the debt was paid. They exchanged vows in front of the simple wooden cross, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever life might bring. "Your prayers are answered," Jackson whispered as he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger. "And so are mine." "I'm here to stay," Olivia whispered back, echoing his words from that first day. "Forever." The kiss they shared was met with cheers and applause, and for that moment, everything was perfect. The first year of their marriage was hard work but deeply satisfying. They rebuilt the barn, bigger and sturdier than before. They expanded the herd, and with Jackson's skill and Olivia's determination, the ranch began to prosper. They hired 2 young men to help with the heavy labor, paying fair wages and treating them well. Marcus Yates tried twice more to cause trouble, sending his men to harass them and even attempting to buy up water rights that would have hurt their operation. But Jackson proved to be as shrewd in business as he was skilled in ranching, and each time they found a way to counter Yates's moves. Eventually, the man seemed to give up, turning his attention to easier targets. On a warm evening in late summer, almost exactly 1 year after they had met, Olivia told Jackson she was pregnant. His reaction was everything she could have hoped for: joy and excitement and tender concern all mixed together. He held her carefully, as if she might break, and told her she had just made him the happiest man in California. Their son was born the following spring, a healthy baby boy with Jackson's blue-green eyes and Olivia's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Olivia's father, and Jackson held the tiny infant with such gentle reverence that Olivia fell in love with him all over again. "He's perfect," Jackson said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're perfect. I can't believe how blessed I am." "We're blessed," Olivia corrected, leaning against his shoulder as they looked down at their sleeping son. "All of us together." Life settled into a rhythm of work and family. The ranch continued to grow, and their reputation for quality cattle spread throughout the region. They were able to buy an adjoining property when the owner retired, expanding their holdings. Jackson proved to be a devoted father, patient and playful with Thomas, and Olivia often caught him singing silly songs or making faces to get the baby to laugh. When Thomas was 2, Olivia became pregnant again. This time it was a daughter, born on a snowy December night. They named her Clara, after Olivia's mother, and she had her mother's dark eyes and a temperament that suggested she would be just as strong-willed. The house that had once felt too empty now rang with the sounds of family life. Jackson added 2 more rooms, and they filled them with love and laughter. On Sundays, they went to the chapel in town, and Olivia always spent a moment kneeling in the same spot where she had prayed all those years ago, thanking God for answering her desperate plea in such an unexpected and wonderful way. When Thomas was 5 and Clara was 3, they had another son, whom they named James. By then, the ranch had become one of the most successful in the county, and their family was well respected in Red Bluff. Jackson had been elected to the town council, and Olivia had started a small school for ranch children who lived too far from town to attend the regular schoolhouse. On a beautiful autumn evening, when the trees were turning gold and the air was crisp with the promise of winter, Olivia and Jackson sat on their porch, watching their children play in the yard. Thomas was teaching Clara how to rope a fence post, while little James toddled around getting in everyone's way. "Can you believe it's been almost 7 years since we met?" Olivia asked, leaning her head on Jackson's shoulder. "Sometimes it feels like just yesterday," Jackson said. "Sometimes it feels like we've been together forever. Both feel right. You ever miss your old life, the freedom of the trail, no responsibilities?" Jackson turned to look at her, his expression serious. "Never, not even once. That life was just me running from loneliness, looking for something without knowing what I was looking for. Here, with you and our children, this ranch, this community, I have everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed of." Even when Thomas tracks mud through the house and Clara refuses to wear shoes and James is cutting teeth and screaming half the night, Olivia asked with a smile. "Especially then," Jackson said, laughing. "Those are the moments that make life real, that make it worth living. I wouldn't trade a single muddy footprint or sleepless night for all the freedom in the world." Olivia kissed him, a soft press of lips that still sent a thrill through her after all these years. "I love you, Jackson Lawson. Thank you for walking into that chapel when I needed you most." "Thank you for letting me stay," Jackson replied. "Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy and giving me a reason to put down roots. You saved me just as much as I saved you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the land they had built together, the children they had created, the life they had made from desperate prayers and unexpected answers. In the distance, the same chapel where they had met stood silhouetted against the darkening sky, a reminder of where it all began. As the stars began to appear overhead, Jackson stood and called the children inside for dinner. They came running, a whirlwind of energy and noise and love. Olivia followed them into the warm, bright house, her heart full of gratitude for every moment, every struggle, every joy that had led them to this place. That night, after the children were tucked into bed and the house was quiet, Olivia and Jackson lay together in their own bed, talking softly about their plans for the future. They wanted to expand the herd again, maybe buy some horses to breed. Thomas would need a pony soon, and Clara was already begging for one. James would need everything his older siblings had needed and more. "We should add on to the house again," Jackson said. "Another bedroom or two, we might need the space." Olivia laughed. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" "I'm just saying our family might not be complete yet," Jackson said, pulling her close. "If you want more children, I'm certainly willing to do my part." "I do want more," Olivia admitted. "I love our family just as it is, but I also love the idea of watching it grow. As long as you're by my side, I can handle anything." "Always," Jackson promised. "For the rest of my life and whatever comes after, I'm by your side." They made love then, slow and tender, a reaffirmation of the vows they had spoken in the chapel years before. And afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they drifted off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious in this harsh land. The years continued to pass, bringing both challenges and triumphs. There were droughts and hard winters, cattle prices that fluctuated wildly, and the constant work of maintaining a ranch. But there were also moments of pure joy. Thomas grew into a capable young man who shared his father's skill with horses. Clara proved to have a head for numbers and helped manage the ranch's finances. James was the charmer of the family, able to talk his way out of any trouble he got into. And there were more children. 2 more daughters, in fact, named Margaret and Ruth, who arrived 2 years apart when the older children were nearly grown. The house rang with noise and activity, and though Olivia sometimes felt exhausted, she never felt alone. Jackson was always there, steady and strong, making her laugh even on the hardest days. Marcus Yates died when Thomas was 15, and his empire was divided among distant relatives who had no interest in maintaining his iron grip on the county. New families moved in, bringing fresh ideas and energy. Red Bluff grew and prospered, and the Jackson Lawson Ranch was at the heart of that growth. On the 20th anniversary of the day they met, Jackson surprised Olivia by taking her back to the chapel. It had been renovated over the years, with new pews and a fresh coat of paint, but the simple wooden cross still hung above the altar, and the space still held that sense of peace and possibility. "You remember standing right here?" Jackson asked, guiding her to the spot where he had first found her kneeling. "You were so desperate, so determined. I took one look at you and knew my life was about to change." "I remember being terrified that you were some kind of vision," Olivia said, smiling at the memory. "You seemed too good to be true, appearing right when I needed someone most." "I was real then and I'm real now," Jackson said. He knelt down on one knee, echoing the proposal he had made 20 years before. "Olivia Thompson Lawson, will you continue to be my wife for another 20 years and then another 20 after that, for as long as we both shall live?" "Forever and always," Olivia said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him. "My prayers were answered that day, and they continue to be answered every day I wake up beside you." They renewed their vows there in the chapel, with only Reverend Morris and his wife as witnesses. It was simple and perfect, a private reaffirmation of the love that had sustained them through 2 decades of life's joys and sorrows. As they left the chapel hand in hand, Olivia thought about the frightened young woman who had knelt on that floor so long ago, begging God for help. She could never have imagined the life that was waiting for her, the love and family and success that would come from one desperate prayer and one lonely cowboy who had somehow found his way to her. The future stretched ahead of them, full of promise and possibility. Their children would grow and have children of their own. The ranch would continue to thrive, passing from generation to generation. And through it all, she and Jackson would be together, partners in every sense of the word, proving that prayers could indeed be answered in the most unexpected and wonderful ways. On the ride back to the ranch, with the California sun warm on their faces and the land they loved spread out before them, Olivia felt a deep sense of contentment. She had lost so much in her life, her mother, her father, the security she had once taken for granted, but she had gained so much more. She had found love when she was not looking for it, had built a family when she thought she would be alone forever, had created a legacy that would outlast her by generations. "What are you thinking about?" Jackson asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Just that I'm grateful," Olivia said. "For everything, for you most of all." "The gratitude goes both ways," Jackson said, squeezing her hand. "You gave a lonely cowboy a reason to stay, a purpose, a home. You gave me everything that matters." They rode on together, 2 people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something lasting and true in a land that tested everyone who dared to make a life there. Behind them, the chapel stood as a silent witness to where it all began. Ahead of them, the ranch waited, full of life and love and the promise of many more years together. And somewhere in the vast blue sky above, perhaps prayers were still being answered, miracles still happening, and lonely souls still finding their way to each other in the most unexpected moments. Because sometimes, when you kneel in desperation and ask for help, the answer comes in the form of a stranger who becomes your everything, who walks through the door and changes your life forever by saying the words you most need to hear. Your prayers are answered. I'm here to stay.